Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service here to present the full moon of April 1st, 2026. And of course, I'm going to be using Washington, D.C., as I always do. And the only unusual thing about using this chart is, and you can see it immediately, is we've got an Aries point ascendant. So 15 degrees of fixed is an Aries point. Okay, that is literally the first arm of the Aries point as it goes from 0 degrees of a cardinal down to 15 of fixed in a 90-degree dial. So we wanted to talk about that. The new moon also takes place at 12 degree or new moon. The full moon. I want to keep doing that. The full moon is, as you can see, we're looking at 12 Aries and 12 Libra, 21 minutes. But what we're also looking at is how the fifth house to the sixth house, you see, actually starting in the fourth house already, we're seeing this heavy stellium. Now, in the fourth house, it's all in Pisces, but by the time you get to the fifth and running into the sixth, you got four different signs, four different planets that are in the sign of Aries. And learn how to speak. So we have an Aries Chiron, an Aries Sun, an Aries Saturn, and an Aries Neptune at this point. So all of these things are now running into the cardinal signs. Okay, that's kind of a very important thing. All right. I also want to note that with Venus in the sixth house, it does, and the descendant being in Taurus. So we're talking Taurus energy. So even though the sixth house is ruled by that Aries, there's that, part of that stellium, then there is going to be also a Venus Taurus type of flavor to everything. So what we're looking at here, because of the Aries to the Libra, what are we looking at? Especially since that Aries happens to fall in a house where the sun is pretty exalted. It's actually the house of Leo, which the sun rules. And here we're going to see action, initiation, forced decision making, and basically, I can't say where I am energy. So this is stuff that we can expect. So it's going to be related to our work, output performance, okay, who we are, what we're putting out there, and they're going to cross over. So you're going to have this, I do all this work, what am I getting from it type of a sense with this. It's a lot of people are going to hit a burnout threshold during this time period. So April is definitely going to be people getting pushed into action, total burnout, and realizing that something that's going on is not sustainable. So there's a lot of that going on where whatever is going on within an organization or a community, there are a lot of things that are not sustainable. And that's going to come in. Now, one of the things that it talks about is they refer to the Pisces Aries bridge. This is the AI. But let me talk about that in terms of what I've been hearing, even through podcasters, that we are leaving an old system behind. We are moving into a new world. Nothing marks that better than going from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aries, because you're going from the old man, the wise old man sometimes, but the deluded old man sometimes, to this child, okay, to this new beginning type energy. And what's happening is there's going to be a lot of action under pressure that's going to cause a lot of confusion and literally fatigue. So basically, the reality of what's going on is going to force some action. And I don't know that people are really ready for the action. Actually, the next thing is people are not ready. Systems are not fully stable. People are not ready. And emotions are still processing. We know something is ending. We know it in the very core of our beings. But unfortunately, we also don't really know where we're going. So it's real interesting. Basically, one of the things that the chart focuses on, as I said, was the Aries point, which is, of course, that ascendant. So whatever's going on in Washington, D.C. is going to be visible throughout the world. But you know what's really interesting is also this midheaven in Leo, which is also public visibility because the energy of Leo is that of, lack of a better way to put it, look at me. And somebody once made a comment that people who have very strong Leos in their charts were somebody in another lifetime, and they kind of bring it with them. And this is really apparent, particularly with who is running the government right now, who happens to have a Leo moon about 3 degrees away from here, and also an ascendant that is right in here. So you got a Mars ascendant energy, which is like a bully, or somebody who, I'm not saying that all people would be like this, but this is a really strong characterization of this, which is, I'm doing it, I'm taking care of it, it's all about me. Basically, there's going to be not only a lot of public visibility, but a lot of intensity, exposure, and truth. So I don't know that it will all be good for this person who's running this country, just FYI. Basically, because nothing is hidden. So it's really about stuff coming out. Something becomes unavoidable and visible. So in other words, there's no way you're not going to see this. Decisions are no longer private, problems no longer containable, and actions must be taken in real time. Because again, you got two public exposures here, two different kinds of public exposure. Okay, so you still have Mars in Pisces, which means that it's still in some ways, see, it's down here 23 degrees, and it still in some ways has an influence at Neptune at 2 degrees. So they're about 10 degrees away, 11 degrees away, or no, I'm sorry, 9 degrees away. And that's a very far thing, except for the fact that Pisces itself is ruled by Neptune. So it's going to give it some more credibility. So a lot of this is going to be triggered by what we're seeing in that Aries energy, which is confusion, mismanagement, emotional exhaustion, and lack of clarity. Lack of clarity prior to. So it's not just a lack of clarity right now, but it's a lack of clarity with regards to what's going on. And it's acting now because it has to, not because there's clarity. It basically things we're going to be looking at as a whole are work conditions, money that's tied to work, value versus effort, and sustainability. How long can I do this? Is it worth putting up with? And so a lot of people will even say that I need to get paid more. I mean, this is all of the things that are going to be going on in our minds while this is going on. And it's only going to become more intense because that Scorpio, which is the ascendant, brings in intensity, the truth coming out, power struggles, no surprise there, and emotional undercurrents. Well, of course, because Scorpio, that sign, is ruled by the planet Pluto. Okay? Pluto, which happens to be in the third house of communications at 5 degrees of Aquarius, 13 minutes. So that gives you, a little bit, just looking at that, just a little bit of play just on the chart itself. I don't normally spend even this amount of time on the wheel because honestly, it's DC. And the rest of us don't live always in DC. And some people don't even let it affect their lives if they can help it. I just don't think we're going to be able to help it as we come into what's coming about. So as I always do, I like to stay right in here, at least for a minute, to look at some of the more obvious midpoints. And we will be doing a great midpoint study in just a minute. Okay. Basically, one of the things that the AI brought up was that this is a phase shift. Well, I think we can feel that we're, it's almost like we know that whatever is going on is not being spoken to us directly, whether it's the news about our government or whether it's people about their jobs. Okay. But basically what's going on is a lot of things are happening because of a deeper motive. Okay, there's, confusion with tolerance and endurance. We're just going to have to endure this, especially as you're going to watch somebody use the word capitulation. And here they're using the word tolerance. I don't think we, the people, will be happy about that. I think if it's about your job, if it's about it doesn't matter. We're not going to be happy with what's being allowed to happen. Action, decision, and boundaries. That's what you can expect because the Aries energy is just getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And eventually, Mars will move into Aries as well. Um, so, work conditions, burnout, these are things, imbalance or efforts versus reward. And it's going to lead to sudden decisions, confrontations, I'm done kind of moments, forced changes in routines or roles. It's like new beginnings are happening, but it's like we're very reactive with this. Okay. Um, so I'm going to, uh, whatever's going on is going to happen now. So you're going to really see this with this illumination. And it results in unfolding over the whole month of April and then moving into May. So we're going to be seeing this energy even as the new moon comes in about 2 weeks. This energy is riding in with it as well. Okay, so just looking at this, well, we see the ascendant right there. But you can see that they're really, other than some of the houses, like the seventh house lining up with it, you're not really seeing a whole lot of activity. But then again, you can't rule out the sixth house. So the sixth and the seventh house, it's really funny. I talked about both of those houses. Not so, I did talk about it with regards to Taurus, the energy of Taurus, and how that's figuring in, because again, it hits the Aries point, but it's really going to be influential in this Aries point energy. Okay, the sixth and the seventh house, which is a house ruled by Taurus and a house ruled by Aries, which again, we've already mentioned. So, Taurus is domestic security. It's food. It's Venus, but it's Venus things that are more. I want to say more necessity than when I think of Libra Venus, which is more about the beauty. The other thing that we see here is the connection to the nodes. Now, this is the second chart. So the nodes have been just floating around that Aries point. They're making aspects to that Aries point for the last couple. I think the last moon, the new moon, and now the full moon. So it still is like looking at our connections, looking at connections. So, and how does that affect you? Now, as I move it, here we go. I now get a Saturn Mars affiliation. Okay. Now, Saturn Mars could be a hardworking individual. Okay. But you got to ask yourself, if you're working really hard, where's it going? So just to kind of take the bleed through, again, you're looking at houses that are more effect, 6th to 12th, the 7th to the 1st. Okay, so again, we're dealing with the obvious. Some of these things are affected. Here's the nodes. But if I look at Saturn, Mars, what is it telling me? Okay, well, it's death, it's sickness, it's separation, it's unemployment, it's general interruptions that happen at work or general periodic working, like seasonal working, seasonal jobs. So again, we go back to TSA workers that are not getting paid. That is interruptions, but it really is a lot about uh, not just the interruptions at work or the disruptions of paychecks, but think about the fact that they're now sending men, or I like to say men and women, boots on the ground. So, I don't know that that goes very well. That's all I'm going to say. about that. Okay. I don't want to elaborate on that, but I do want to say I don't think that goes very well. Okay. So a lot of things have to be considered with this particular chart. So what I'm going to do so that we can further look at, this period of time, I'm just making sure I got all my notes. Things to watch out for. I'm just going to go through this. Overgiving, free work that drains you, situations where effort does not equal return. Okay. So put the Mars Saturn on top of that because that's just the Aries. Okay. So it's about time for us to reevaluate our time and how we're using it. It is time for us as people to set boundaries. This could be within relationships, but it could be within jobs. It is about acting on what you already know is not working. And sometimes when it comes to jobs, it is the lower man on the pole that knows what's not working better than the upper guys. So just throwing that out there. Okay. So basically, it's about action forced by a reality after a period of confusion and depletion. What was internal becomes public and must be acted upon. It's about value, money, and sustainable, non-negotiable. Okay. So this is where we are. Okay. Now, at this point, I am going to put us on pause. Hopefully it doesn't cause a commotion here. So as we're looking at the chart, now we see it's my chart from Solar Fire, which again has all the asteroids in it and everything. So I apologize. It's a very busy chart. I can tell you a few things by looking at this chart. We've got an equatorial ascendant type of a constriction here with Uranus, which means that other people will not act as we expect them to. Now, that's already starting because of this war. People are going around this president to make arrangements for themselves. Okay, that's happening. I believe that's going to happen also in our places of work. I believe it's going to happen in our lives in general, where it's not going to be a predictable situation on any level. Okay, so as I look at this, we're going to start. I don't want to spend too much time on this chart at all because I don't really feel, other than propaganda at the ascendant, I don't feel there's a whole lot to talk about. This is about dependency and partners that we're dependent upon. Okay. And I really feel like this is not going well. That's just, again, something that's coming out of this whole thing. All right. And I think that there is going to be an abundance of overreactions. And the overreactions could come from other people. So these are just things to look out for that are obvious, that are set within this chart, that hang out around the descendant and ascendant. Now, if you happen to live in California, I don't think this would be the same chart. Or if you live in another country, it won't be the same chart, unless, of course, you live on the east coast of maybe Canada or something. Okay. Now, maybe Prince Edward Island has a close chart, but you're not going to get, everybody doesn't have this chart. So because of that, I like to shift immediately to the midpoint. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull up the sun axis. Okay. So with that said, here we are. Here's the first arm of the sun axis. So as we're going to look at a few things, and I'll be, let me describe them to you. Here we go. We have Chiron Hygeia. I'm just making sure I've got everything here. Right there. And Chiron Ascendant. That's in there. Venus Pallas, right there. Just kind of calling them out. Ascendant Zeus, right here. A vertexual ascendant Zeus. Hades Cupido, right here. And also Hygeia with Zeus. Okay, so I'm going to throw them in many ways. They're going to be thrown all together. Okay, now remember that Zeus could also be this war. Okay, it could be related to guns, explosives, a lot of different things, guns as particular. But you think of the war and the health of, the well-being of, um, or what it's doing to not just the people that are there, bless their hearts, but to everybody in the world. So here we go, because it's in the sun. Here we go again. It's in the sun-moon axis, which means the whole world. Here we go, right? So the numbers that we're looking for, and I did have them written down so that we could easily have access to them, is 1221 cardinal and 2721 right here of fixed. So if you have anything around 1221 of cardinal, we know cardinal is Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. Or if you have something in Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio at 2721 or around there, you're affected. Okay? A lot of us are. So with that said, we're looking at situations that are that are now coming to a head, that need to be fixed or adjusted or healed. Okay, that the conditions that we're looking at are going to require healing and or correction. Okay, and this is literally physical health, emotional burnout, and situational work imbalance situations, which these are the big things that are going on now, regardless of where you live and who you are. Okay. So basically, you're looking at the imbalance being felt directly. And it's almost as though it's like we're living through a wounding experience, every single one of us right now. Okay. And it's everything that's going on is affecting us on a personal level. Well, that's true. Whatever they say, those jerks in DC, whatever is going on is affecting you. It doesn't matter where you live. Okay, it's like you can't ignore it anymore. It's showing up in your day-to-day realities. And it's about money, values, relationships. It takes into account strategy, wisdom, pattern recognition. So that's Venus and Pallas. Okay, what I had been discussing before was the Chiron stuff with both Hygeia, Zeus, and the Ascendant. Okay, so this war, whether you want it to affect you or not, whether you know anyone in the military or not, doesn't matter. It's going to affect you directly. Okay. So basically, we have to think about what everything we're going through is worth. Is this really worth it? Okay. And it's strategic in its evaluation of value. Okay. That's interesting. So it's not an emotional Venus. It's considered calculated, intelligence, and pattern aware. It's considered with the Zeus. Now we're moving through Zeus again. It's personal direction. It's like it's going to affect each of us in terms of where we're headed, our desires, our drives, and our targeted action. Okay. It's like we're acting on what we need to pursue, and it's intentional, focused, not passive. All right. As we move to Hades Cupido, we're looking at decay, neglect, what is worn down, unpleasant conditions, group, environment, social settings, and associations, a dysfunctional or draining group / environment. So it's either draining you through the group that you're dealing with, or it's draining you through that very environment. It's a group situation, a collective structure, and an environment that is not healthy or productive. Remember that the opposite of the 5th house, which is where the sun is the 11th house, which is where the moon is. There's our associates and our groups. Okay, so that you get it. So as we kind of put all, and this is only the first arm, as we put this all together, we see a situation within a group or environment has become unhealthy or draining. It's creating personal wound, an imbalance that requires correction. There's your Chiron, Hygeia after Hades, Cupido, and Chiron ascendant. This leads to strategic evaluation of worth and value, which is our Venus Palace, and it results in directed personal action to change the situation. And there is the Hygeia Zeus and the ascendant Zeus. And it's about literally recognizing what is unhealthy. It's about the impact on us, the people, okay? And it's a strategic value assessment. Okay, so as we move on, it's also about intentional action. So here we go with second. Okay, so this is, no, I meant Hades Cupido, the lecture. Okay, so this is very personal. In other words, we're all going to feel this very personally. I think that's because of the sun being in the 5th house, but also just the sun being in Aries, because again, it's not going to be in everybody's 5th house. So it's an unhealthy group situation that forces a personal realization about imbalance, leading to strategic decisions and intentional actions. Okay, that is what's going on. Second arm. So we move to the second arm, which would be, for our numbers, 451 fixed. So a couple ways, like what I do is, because I want to make the math as easy as possible, I took 2721, which actually comes to 5721 because you would have to do the dial number. And what I do is I added. And when I added, I came up with a 7951 because it's 2230, and 7951, here we go, is hanging here. And so therefore, it also equals a fixed sign. And so it comes down here and it's 451 fixed. Okay, so again, these points, these axes, hit 4 different areas in the zodiac always. And those areas then multiply based on the signs. Okay, so it's more about degree points. And that's sort of how Uranian kind of flows anyway. So here's our second arm. We're going to look at Neptune node. We're going to look at Saturn at Amitas. We're going to look at Venus to Ceres, the equatorial ascendant to Cupido, Uranus to Cupido. And remember, I told you Uranus is pretty big. Then we have Hygeia to Vesta, Kronos to midheaven. Remember, that would be Washington. And Jupiter to midheaven, again, Washington. So your chart, again, really pulls in the Washington chart. So again, whatever is going on here is going to be felt around the world. And we're only doing sun and moon yet, okay? So here, as I pointed out, we are looking at the second arm. That's what we refer to it as. It's the second arm. And here we're going to be dealing a lot more with Neptune, with the nodes. So there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lack of clarity within our connections, our associations. And so this unclearness is also very draining. And it also is basis is idealization of our connections. Okay, so we have to be really careful of doing that. Don't put other people on pedestals right now. It's going to be very disappointing. So right now we're being tied to situations that are not clearly defined, energetically are draining, and are based on expectations rather than reality. Wow, wonder where that comes in. This is an entry condition. Okay, so this is just kind of like the beginning condition because something newness is being brought in. Okay, with Saturn at Amitas, we're looking at restrictions and reality and limits. Okay, so Saturn is finally starting to make a presence. And I think I had spoken about that. And with Saturn comes restriction and reality, the two big R's. Admetus creates blockages, standstills, immobility. So it's a situation that is going to be unable to move forward. We're all stuck for a moment, you know? And so it basically is referring to issues that are not temporary. And again, I said we're stuck. We're very, very stuck. We cannot improve. And that is unfortunate. So as we move on with this arm, we're going to be looking at money, value, and relationships. We're going to look at money and relationships in terms of how much we value them, or do they value us? And this will include also Cirrus, which is about how much we give, our nurturing and sustaining. It's about giving energy and resources without getting equal return. I think I talked about this in a couple of videos recently. So again, we're talking about over nurturing, over giving, and supporting something that doesn't sustain you. The next one we're looking at is Ascendant Cupido, which is, it's us. All right. So it's interesting because again, it's really DC's chart, but how it affects us. Okay. As the group, the community, the environment, and then what is the role that you play within that? You are actively participating in this structure. See, that's the ascendant part, so that even though I'm talking about Washington, D.C., and it may affect someone like me more, it's still affecting everybody. Okay? Then we have a Uranus Cupido. And this is breaks, disruptions, separations of the group. Okay? A sudden change or break within a group setting. Okay, so it's about group structure and our involvement and how well the group functions. And here we have health correction with Hygeia Vesta, devotion, commitment, focus. So you can't focus on something, you can't be very devoted to it if you're not getting a whole lot back, because it will cause problems with your health and well-being. So you have to reevaluate what it is that you're devoted to based on your health. With Kronos Midheaven, we're looking at authority, recognition, and leadership, as well as credibility. And then we're looking at also with that midheaven, the public direction or career. So if you live somewhere else, you're looking at it from the angle of public direction, okay? Stepping into a higher authority or redefining a public role. There's greater professionalism, higher standards, and leadership positioning. With Jupiter midheaven, there's growth, opportunity, and expansion and career, particularly in the public. So I believe that even though we're going through a lot and you're going to have to reevaluate what you're putting into things, I also believe that a lot of us are beginning to see the beginning of how we can move forward and opportunities that could arise because of everything going on. So there can still be some growth or professional directions, healing professional directions because of Jupiter. Okay, but that expansion becomes possible only after the correction is made. Okay, so the saying of the whole thing, involvement is in unclear and or draining group situations leads to recognition that the situation is blocked and cannot be progressed. This highlights an imbalance of giving versus receiving within one's role within a group. A disruption or break in the group dynamics, which is that Uranus energy, prompting a reassessment of commitments based on health and sustainability. This ultimately redirects us as individuals toward greater authority and professional alignment, opening doors for growth and expansion. We will learn from this. We will move on. Okay. Now, as I move to, as we move past this part of the chart, we're going to now look at the asteroids. Just want to make sure I've covered everything. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to stay in the same axis, which you've just seen. So we've got Nockbar, we've got Hopi, Rank, and Sheldon, and what they represent is the social or group context. So it's our place within a community structure. Okay, so Nockbar is your neighbors, Hopi is community and shared values, Rank is hierarchy and position, and Sheldon is individuality within a group, awkward fit. It's also like that body awareness, okay? It's about being a part of a group, but not being fully aligned with that group. And again, maybe you don't agree with the values, the expectations, or the rules, okay? Then we've got Eros and Valentine, which talks a lot about desire, passion, attraction. But Valentine is retrograde, which means there can be a reconsidering of love, attachment. And again, it's like somebody who might giving so much to a relationship, then they're saying to themselves, wow, I got to reevaluate this. And then ask yourself, why are you still here? Minerva is retrograde. Make is retrograde. So we have to rethink our strategies as it relates to recreation, redesign, and it's an internal shift. It's like reworking our approach with regards to creation and strategy, and it's rethinking our methods because you really want to build, and right now it's just really tough. Okay, Letitia's an opportunity and Nike are running together, timing, interruptions, change on the thread. So things are changing. This is what I always talk about. I said before, turnarounds. So there'll be openings. We're rethinking, what does it mean to win? We're rethinking that. What does it mean? So there's a shift in the direction that redefines success. It's being reconsidered. What you might have thought was successful before, maybe not so much anymore. Pluto, Aragon, and BAM are running together too in that axis. We got transformation, intensity. We have victimization and fairness. We have sudden impact and shocks. The powerful realization by a sharp event, something happening that really, aha, that type thing. Okay, we're going to be forced to our awareness. It will not be ignored. Okay, and then we have Delius, Gawain, and Escapula, which are problem solving, building a way out. Gawain is our integrity, doing what is right, but it's also that intellectual submissive. It's almost like, well, we know better, but I guess we have to go along with this, that kind of thing. Truth revealed, consequences of actions. Well, there will be consequences because, again, Gawain is the smart people, just stepping aside for the dumb people to do what they want to do. It's finding a solution based on truth and integrity. Okay, it's a situation marked by excess and overextension or overreaching to tipping points, triggering an awakening and a need for change. Underlying this imbalance or questionable dynamic within a group or environment where one's role may not be aligned with the collective structure. Emotional or energetic investment is reevaluated, leading to a reconsideration of strategy and creative direction. A turning point occurs that redefines success, opens new opportunity, often triggered by a sharp or unavoidable realization. The outcome is restructuring based on truth, integrity, and intelligent problem solving. Okay, it's about awakening from overextension. It's about questionable imbalances. Okay, it's time for us to reevaluate things and to strategically rework and redefine, what does it mean to be successful? Okay, so basically, it's an awakening triggered by an excess of imbalances that leads to a strategic reevaluation and decision turning points, which will then cause a restructuring based on truth and integrity. Okay, so then I move on to the Aries point. And so for the Aries point, we do the same thing. We're going to start with the midpoints and, first arm and then a second arm. And here we're looking at Jupiter, Uranus, Juno, Kronos, Mercury, Jupiter, Mercury, and it's interesting because I actually put them all together in this one. So I lie, there won't be a second arm. They're all in one. So the second arm, as we know, just so that we can see it, is right there. Oops, 230. See, there you go. And this is where I saw some there, Sun, Venus, Venus, Moon. Okay, so this is all, and we did see that Saturn, Mars. I already showed you Saturn, Mars. That's interesting. Saturn, Mars actually showed up right away. So basically with Saturn, Mars, there's going to be a lot of restriction as we deal with reality and force under pressure. We've already talked about it. It was a trigger pressure point that we talked about at the very beginning. So it's as we're doing, this is forced action that occurs under pressure, but it's not optional. It's like you have to. That's the big part of what we're seeing here. And within these midpoints, okay, we have Chiron Admetus, which is a wound that cannot be removed or resolved without intervention. Basically because it feels there's a stuck quality to the healing, which is that Admetus, or a block. It also equals the ascendant descendant of this chart, which is us versus them kind of thinking. Then we have the Aries point with ascendant Juno, which I already spoke about, which is agreements, contracts, and commitments where we just really have to reevaluate. Do you stay or do you go? Just like that song, do you stay or do you go? So with the Aries point, we have an Admetus Zeus. With Zeus, there's a desire, a drive. With Admetus, it's blocked. Okay, this is frustration, frustrated desires, blocked movement forward. It's, you're just really stopped from anything that you might feel excited about. I want to move forward, but something's preventing it. Then we move to Kronos Mercury, which is authoritative communications, an important message. We then move to Aries point, ascendant. So again, personal situations that become public. Okay. We're now going to move to, they call it the emotional layer. So that's how the AI split them up. So we have an Aries point equals Sun, Venus, and Moon, Venus, which I just spoke about. So we move into value. Emotional investment becomes visible. So what you value will become, or what you invest in becomes visible. With Aries point to Admetus Vesta, okay, the commitment is no longer moving forward. You're not really as committed to it because it got blocked, but also because as things get blocked, sometimes we get to rethink and reevaluate. With Aries point to Hades Juno, there's going to decay and unpleasantness within agreements, within partnerships. Unhealthy or unequal agreements also are there. Maybe it's because they're outdated, maybe because they're draining, maybe because they're no longer functioning. Aries point equals Volcanus Cupido, which is power within that dynamic, power within group dynamics. Aries point to South Node, North Node. Remember, we've seen this a couple times now. Karmic or fated connections. Okay. And what we're going to get for an interpretation on those midpoints, a situation reaches a point where action is required under pressure, exposing a long-standing blockage or unresolved issue. Relationship dynamics and commitments come into focus here, particularly where forward motion has been restricted. This leads to authoritative communication or decisive statements, making the situation publicly visible. At the center is a question of value, emotional investment, and reciprocity. especially in situations where devotion has not led to progress. Unhealthy or imbalanced agreements are revealed within a group dynamic that carries significant influence and pressure. So again, we're really dealing with a situation that is just it's not doable anymore. Okay. So moving on, we're looking at, I'm just making sure I got everything here. Sorry, guys. We're looking at the asteroids. Oh, pressure forces an action on a blocked or unhealthy commitment. So in other words, a lot of reasons why things won't work is because of the amount of pressure applied to them. And it leads to public recognition, to a public redefinition and role within group dynamics, which is something I already spoke about. So now we're going to look at the asteroids that fall in this axis. This is our last section here. And the asteroids like Lie, Wake, Wiles, Wesley, Artemis, Berlin, Urania, Phaethon, Laplace, Hygeia, Sappho, Nymph, Messenger, Demeter, Dionesus, South Node, Vipera. I want to note that South Node is there but not North because I used a different, these are true nodes, which means we're oppressed, okay? Which means our timing is off, which means that some of the connections are from the past. Dolores is retrograde. Vipera is retrograde. Grieve, Smiley, Fisher, Icarus, Check, Poseidon, and Schmidt. Okay, so here we go with this cluster. And they're going to start with Lie, Wiles, and Vipera. Why? Because they're all wily. Vipera, these are not good, okay? So we got falsehood, misinterpretation, Wiles for cunning behavior and manipulation, and Vipera for hidden toxicity, particularly with things that are not very obvious. Okay? So things are not as they appear. Well, we could have said that. All right. So we go to Wake, Messenger, and Weasley. Okay. Wake being an awake, a realization. Messenger because we've been informed. And Weasley is interesting because it's a faulty perception. Okay. And it is asking us to become more ethically aware. So there's a realization triggered by misinformation. That really does sum that up. Artemis to Urania. So if you think about Artemis, you think about independence and self-direction, but you also have to think about like Urania, which is astrology, but it's also higher knowledge and the work that we do, our own work, standing independently in your knowledge or calling. In other words, whatever your work is, being good and credible at what it is that you do. That's what that's about. Phaethon and Icarus are about overreach and risk. And again, Phaethon is the vehicle. Okay. So it's about a loss of control and things going too far. And how that happens is through Icarus, because Icarus is overreach. So something is pushed beyond safe limits. So it's also echoing the Pholus, and Bacchus. Okay, that really highlights them. And they're in the sun-moon axis. Poseidon and Laplace. Laplace is also, you're trying to make sense of something, but it's also lies. So it's trying to make sense of lies or trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Poseidon is belief systems, perception, idealization, but also propaganda and misinformation. You're trying to make sense of something that's just not clear. Pholus is about, again, they're getting away. We go back to Pholus, which is, and it's like things have gotten out of control. That's the best way to put it. We also then move down to relationship and desire with Sappho, Nymph, and Dionesus. But Dionesus being retrograde, that's the addiction. And, relationships are addictions. Okay, we can be addicted to relationships. But with it retrograde, it's about that reevaluation of that indulgence, of that emotional entanglement. So it's about that reconsideration. Nymph is charming. These are like the people that suck in because they're so charming. I think we've talked about that before. And that is definitely something else that's going on. things are just not as they appear. I think that's the biggest thing that we could talk about with a lot of what's going on. We have care and burden with Demeter and Hygeia. And of course, Hygeia is our health and well-being, Demeter is our nurturing. And this is recognizing that what you are nurturing has to be healthy. Okay? Like you can't continue to give to something that hurts you. Dolores is retrograde with grief. Dolores is also about things getting worse. Now, here in AI, they call it internalized pain with grief, which is loss and emotional weight. Okay, acknowledgement of the emotional cost is what they said. But it is almost like it's getting worse. It's like you look at the situation, it's like, oh my God, this is like getting off the charts. Vipera is underlining toxicity, whereas Smiley and Fisher, Fisher is a lies. Okay, so Smiley is watch who's smiling because I think they're lying to you. Okay, and even though it might have a pleasant surface, smile, it's masking something else. Be aware. It's a personal karmatic pattern is being activated for all of us because of the South Node. A situation reveals inconsistencies or hidden dynamics beneath the surface, prompting an awakening through new awareness or information. This leads us to more independence and alignments with our own true path or knowledge, especially where something has been pushed beyond healthy limits. Emotional involvement and attachments are reevaluated, particularly in situations where nurturing has come at a personal cost. The emotional impact will become clear, revealing a deeper pattern that may have been masked by a pleasant surface. Yeah, it looks good on the surface, but it's not. Ultimately, this represents a karmic turning point where past patterns are recognized and can be changed, leading to more authentic and self-aligned direction. So we can be more aligned with our directions. Okay. And I can move on. All right. I want to say a little bit more about how lie and Laplace are both lies, okay? Just because I have to correct the AI on this consistently, okay? That when you have lie, which is a direct falsehood, with wiles, which is cunning and manipulation, with Vipera, your hidden toxicity and subtle poisons, it reinforces that deception, the lie, the Laplace. So it's a representation that is a deception. It's a misrepresentation. Okay, so something is going to be misinterpreted or misrepresented or misleading about what is going on in the next month. Please be aware of that, particularly since there's a Neptune node, which is people who do it on purpose. You're not just confused, you've been misled. The agreements, because of Hades Juno, will be based on flawed or false premises, which we just talked about, okay? So I think that's really, really important. And it's really important because that I just really felt I had to go through it with you before I ended this video. But with that said, I am going to say, until we meet again, I wish you only happy readings. And if you would like, share, comment, especially the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Take care. Happy readings.